Kim Miso mentioned that she had called Park Suho multiple times while on dispatch, frustrated and questioning why she was being scrutinized for checking other people's call records. She reflected on the chaos that ensued at the bureau when she suddenly disappeared. Just then, a red-haired girl entered the room, delighting both Choi Soo-young and Kim Miso. Choi Soo-young asked if she had brought the chicken, and the three of them sat down to enjoy the food that had been brought. Sehee asked if they had seen the video of Song-yi getting rejected by Park Suho in 5 minutes. Kim Miso inquired if Song-yi and Park Suho were dating, to which Sony explained that it was all revealed in the latest edition of Unanswered Questions. She had been rejected the moment they met. Now she was being tutored because she aimed to take the Awakened Mercenary exam. When asked why she got rejected, Song-yi replied that it was because she was weak. Kim Miso deduced that Park Suho's type was someone strong. Sehee then turned to Kim Miso and asked if she was Park Suho's liaison officer at the bureau. Kim Miso proudly stated that she was ranked #1 among women in Korea, and foremost among the country's strongest women. She playfully asked if Sehee could introduce her to Park Suho. Meanwhile, the news broadcasted that 24 hours had passed since Park Suho entered the Level 7 dungeon. 38 mercenaries, including S-rank members, joined the vanguard along with the full party of 30 from Special Forces Unit 707A, who were preparing to raid the dungeon. After a while, the other teams were ready to enter the Level 7 dungeon. Park Junho asked a newbie about Monk Moonan's whereabouts. The newbie explained that Monk Myungjin had entered a Level 1 dungeon with them yesterday and had single-handedly defeated the boss several times. However, he had suddenly left by himself with a strangely fierce expression. Park Junho asked if Monk Myungjin had brought his medicine. On the other side, Sun Jinwoo addressed his team, stating that their only intel on the Level 7 dungeon was that it was an undead land. They would act as the vanguard and first find the best place to set up camp. As they gathered to analyze the situation and devise an operation plan, the director reminded everyone of their status as the country's best combat team, urging them to give their utmost. They began entering the portal, with 28 members successfully passing through, while 2 S-rankers failed, and the portal abruptly closed. Just then, the door burst open and a countdown commenced, startling everyone. Before we continue, take a moment to answer the question of the day. Best duo in Manhwa? Comment down below for a chance to be shouted out. Now, back to the recap. The director identified the intruder as Park Suho, confirmed by reporters announcing his return. News broadcasts hailed his achievement of clearing a Level S dungeon in just 24 hours. The director respectfully requested Park Suho's assistance and glanced at Jang Jae-shik and Dong-soo, who were sleeping on the grass. He inquired about their well-being, to which Park Suho replied that they hadn't slept for 3 days and were resting. Acknowledging Suho's likely exhaustion, the director asked him to detail his dungeon-clearing strategy in writing while he rested. Kim Miso suggested any information, even a map or monster details, would greatly aid the teams preparing for the next raid. Park Suho questioned if they planned to hastily assemble another combat team for his hunting grounds. He refused, citing the national emergency to prevent a dungeon break and asserting his capability to handle it alone. He viewed their proposed team as an attempt to stake claim on what he saw as his personal challenge rather than genuine assistance. Kim Miso understood his perspective and assured him they wouldn't send additional teams. However, she mentioned a special forces unit from the Ministry of Defense currently involved in a raid. Park Suho requested permission for them to enter his hunting grounds. Kim Miso agreed after consulting with the director. Park Suho then confronted Park Junho, questioning the whereabouts of Monk Myungjin. Meanwhile, Monk Myungjin was on the verge of attacking a reporter when he spotted him. Quickly ordered the guards to bring the reporter over. The director questioned their actions as guards apprehended the reporter and escorted him to the portal door. They all entered the portal once again. Reporters speculated that they were entering the dungeon right away without resting, assuming Park Suho was determined to prevent a dungeon break by himself. They speculated that the Suho Guild might become the first Level 7 guild, but it was too early to determine as one would need to clear the dungeon twice a day to prevent a break. They mentioned that they would at least have to wait and see if they could reduce the clear time to 7 hours. The guards tossed Monk Myungjin into the portal, while reporters observed that Monk didn't appear to be in good health. After a while, the director announced that he would take a short break and gather information from them once they awakened. He reminded them that he was still the unseen commander and needed something to appease the higher-ups. He brought in the first aid van where the doctor checked if the machines were working properly. He confirmed that both machines were currently at B rank. Another person pointed out that they were at E rank and D rank when they entered. The doctor examined their status screens and expressed amazement at the significant level up they had achieved from going through a Level 7 dungeon just once emphasizing the concrete proof of such progress right there. Suddenly, both of them woke up, ready for action. After a few seconds, Dong-soo realized they were no longer in immediate danger. He inquired about Park Soo-ho's whereabouts. The doctor responded that he heard Park Soo-ho had re-entered the dungeon about 20 minutes ago, along with 2 other members of the Soo-ho Guild. Jang Jae-shik suggested that they likely had only about 30 minutes left and asked for guidance on what they should do during that time. The director advised them to spend all the money they had on purchasing items if they wished to avoid dying without even leaving a corpse. They proceeded to check their status screens. The scene shifts to Lee Sung-woo, watching news coverage reporting Park Soo-ho's immediate re-entry into the dungeon without rest, accompanied by cheering crowds celebrating his raid. The news further highlights the completion of a residential area for 3,000 households in Namangju Suho land, leaving Lee Sung-woo in shock over how Park Soo-ho managed such a feat in just one day. Lee Sung-woo also notes coverage of Park Soo-ho, Monk Myung-jin, and Park Jun-ho reducing their dungeon clear time by 3 hours, achieving their second clear in a remarkable 21 hours. Meanwhile, on the other side, a medical team arrives to provide healing support. Dong-soo, despite having no injuries, finds his stamina at 30%. Monk Myung-jin requires 1 hour and 20 minutes of healing. Dong-gu questions the Bureau's actions, prompting Kim Miso to explain that it's their healing service aimed at assisting them. She requests they allow them to take care of Monk Myungjin, despite Dong's skepticism about its necessity given their accelerated recovery pace in the dungeon. Under Park Soo-ho's orders, they prepare to pick up Monk Myungjin and Dong-soo to re-enter the portal. Kim Miso assures them she'll monitor the construction's progress, ensuring they can focus all their efforts on dungeon raids. Park Soo-ho agrees, suggesting she consult Aunt Sukya if she has further questions, then directs them to proceed through the portal. Park Jun-ho wakes up, questioning why the dungeon hasn't been cleared yet. Dong-soo informs him it had been cleared once, and they returned. Park Jun-ho advocates for humanity, suggesting they acknowledge their differences. Park Soo-ho remarks they've only been resting for 30 minutes, emphasizing it's sufficient given their respective ranks. Jun-ho at C rank, Ishik at B rank, and Myung-jin and Dong-gu also at B rank. They proceed to check their levels on the status screen. He remarked that their bodies were rapidly growing stronger, but their minds had yet to catch up, which was why they felt fatigued despite having had ample time to recover. He emphasized that with such an attitude, they wouldn't be able to protect their home even if they reached S rank. Consequently, they were all undergoing special training until their lifeless expressions regained some vitality. Park Soo-ho remarked, "Don't these guys realize they have to get stronger quickly so they can hold down the fort while I'm away?" Just then, undead skeleton knights arrived to attack them. They fought back fiercely, knocking down most of the skeletons. However, undead orcs approached them next. Park Soo-ho observed, "This wave of opponents is coming at us on its own. Is it because of Myungjin?" They all used their different powers to battle the undead orcs. Suddenly, an orc kicked Park Jun-ho. Jang Jae-shik noticed that Jun-ho had suddenly lost strength, and his sword's edge was becoming dull. Dong-soo remarked that his accuracy was also suffering. Meanwhile, an orc was overpowering Myungjin. Just then, a banshee appeared to attack them. An operator showed a video to Kim Miso and the director, where Jang Jae-shik was seen battling the banshee. He described the banshee as an undead-type monster, equivalent to a mid-boss, estimated to be S rank. Its specialty lay in a debuff that reduced its opponent's physical damage, accuracy, and speed. It could also transform its arm into an arrow for ranged attacks. The director questioned why they didn't have the rest of the video. The operator explained that they had attempted to forcibly extract the video while Dong-soo was sleeping in the infirmary, but he had woken up in the middle of it. He mentioned that they would formally request the video from Dong-soo once he came out. Adding to the discussion, the director noted that aside from Hero's team, no one had ever succeeded in clearing a level 7 dungeon. Kim Miso pointed out Park Soo-ho's inclusion in their team, noting that no other team had returned from raiding a level 7 dungeon yet. She mentioned Japan's reluctance to share information and the numerous requests they were receiving about the Level 7 dungeon. She emphasized that their immediate priority was the safety of SF Unit 77A and asked for an update on their situation. In the midst of the intense situation, Park Soo-ho shows a screen depicting Jang Jae-shik, who was barely C rank at the time, receiving healing from his fairies after a near-death experience upon entering the dungeon. He explains that not only did Jae-shik receive healing, but also a significant buff, attributing their success against the Banshee to Park Soo-ho's extraordinary long-range healing abilities. He emphasizes that without Soo-ho's intervention, no team on the planet could defeat such formidable foes like the Banshee without suffering casualties. The director queries how long it's been since the Special Forces unit entered the dungeon. Park Soo-ho replies that 9 Earth days have passed, noting they still have some time left compared to Hero's team in Sorrow's level S dungeon. However, he expresses concern that the SF unit's composition is weaker, making them vulnerable to collapse if they encounter a Banshee early and sustain casualties. He insists they must act to save them. Kim Miso questions what they can do from the outside. At that moment, the director receives a call informing him that Park Suho's team is emerging from the dungeon, having achieved their third clear with a reduced time of 13 hours. Shocked by this news, the director declares Suho will arrive soon and instructs them to hold on to Park Suho. Kim Miso analyzes Park Suho's past dungeon clear times up to level 6, noting he completed solo raids in half the time compared to team efforts. Based on this data, she predicts Suho's 4th level S dungeon raid should take approximately 6 hours. Reflecting on Suho's exceptional skills, she regrets not preventing the SF unit's deployment. She presses the director on what he meant by saving the SF unit. He explains that Suho's mastery improves with repetition, suggesting that assembling a team of A-rank veterans under Suho's leadership could yield remarkable results. Shortly after, Park Suho emerges from the level S dungeon, and the director approaches him, earnestly pleading for his assistance. The director interjects, stating that spending more than 15 days in the dungeon reduces the survival rate to below 50%, and they cannot afford to lose their Special Forces unit so needlessly. He angrily demands to know who authorized such a reckless entry. He admits to making a miscalculation due to his impatience and asks how he can save the people who have already entered the dungeon. Kim Miso responds calmly, explaining that there is a way to go and save them. She recounts an incident that occurred 5 years ago in a level 1 dungeon near the Namhan River in Yongpyeong. She details how since the level 1 dungeon appeared in a field, the entrance fee remained affordable, and there was a high chance of finding an artifact, making it a popular spot known as the Lottery and Treasure Dungeon. As more people came to try their luck, the number of available doors quickly decreased. The problem arose with the last door that was raided. 5 C-ranked mercenaries entered a dungeon with a capacity limit of 15. Upon entering, they discovered the corpses of those who had entered earlier, killed by spiders. Park Suho questions why there were already corpses everywhere if they hadn't even started hunting and the door had just opened. Kim continues, explaining that the door's countdown began suddenly. By the end of their desperate attempt to exit, only one mercenary had managed to escape alive. This particular mercenary happened to be a track and field athlete, enabling him to make it through the door within the countdown. The director mentions that an investigation was initiated, and the inquiry concluded that 2 teams had entered the dungeon simultaneously. Shortly after a computing error, the director explains that it revealed the final dungeon could accommodate more people, but he stresses the importance of not exceeding capacity limits while soldiers remain in the dungeon before its potential collapse. Kim Miso summarizes that additional individuals can enter under strict adherence to these limits. Park Suho requests they ask him to clear the remaining dungeons swiftly to rescue the SF unit trapped inside. The director affirms that Suho is the only one capable of saving them, questioning if maximum capacity was reached upon entry. Kim Miso informs him there were 2 available spots, and calculates if Suho clears it 4 to 5 times a day, he could reach them before the break, crucial as survival rates diminish over time. If it takes a month in dungeon time, survival rates could plummet to 2%. Underscoring the urgency. Frustrated, Park Suho wonders aloud why he must undertake such a futile task, suggesting government compensation for missed opportunities during the rescue. Kim Miso firmly declines, signaling there's no need for such arrangements. Meanwhile, a reporter announces Park Suho's current location at the level S dungeon in Ui Janggu Suho Land. Despite reducing the level 7 dungeon clear time to just 4 hours, Park Suho has embarked on a rescue mission for the SF combined unit. Only 10 minutes into his entry, he is expected to complete it in approximately 2 hours. Suddenly, everyone is shocked as Park Suho unexpectedly returns from the dungeon, reporting a shocking event. He reveals he has cleared the level 7 dungeon for the 6th time in a mere 13 minutes and is now re-entering. The scene shifts in the news broadcast, highlighting the world's fascination with Park Suho's extraordinary dungeon clearing abilities, capturing global attention with his unprecedented feats. Meanwhile, 4 days have passed since the Special Forces unit entered the dungeon. Park Suho has embarked on his 8th raid of the dungeon, maintaining an impressive average clear time of 20 minutes per raid. Outside, news reports indicate that the combined unit survival rate has dropped below 50%, prompting numerous individuals to gather in the square, anxiously awaiting updates. Inside the Level S dungeon, The SF unit continues its perilous journey toward their base camp. Suddenly, Choi Soo-young halts them all and alerts them to a wraith located 140 meters ahead. Banshees attack the team, and despite their attempts to conceal themselves, Choi Soo-young manages to locate them again. A soldier engages and eliminates one of the Banshees. The girl with red hair insists that they need to relocate, but Choi Soo-young asserts that it's too late. A soldier from the base attempts to establish contact with the main squad, reports a substantial group of monsters advancing toward their position. 40 orcs from 6 o'clock, 20 ogres from 7 o'clock, and 200 goblins from 3 o'clock. He instructs the main squad to proceed to the intersection point 200 meters ahead at 11 o'clock and prepare for battle. The girl with red hair issues orders for them to prepare for battle and launch a counterattack. Park Soo-ho notices something flying overhead at an impressive speed and inquires about it. She explains that she's analyzing the Undead Monster Field Guide from ERA for analysis and suggests they simply go and eliminate it. However, a goblin attacks her, throwing her aside. Park Soo-ho realizes that their mana and stats are decreasing at an abnormal rate, making it impossible to defeat the undead in this condition. He suspects it might be some kind of curse. Observing the Banshees, he identifies the cause of their diminishing physical attributes rapidly, realizing their endurance is limited. He concludes that they urgently need to inform the scouting unit and tries to establish contact with them to relay information to her. Meanwhile, people observe that Park Soo-ho has returned and acknowledges that he has achieved the incredible record of clearing a dungeon 87 times in only 6 days. As he emerges from the portal, Dong-soo also notices the news of his return and inquires if they can go to meet him. Jong-jik responds by asking if he wants to go to that place again. Dong-soo clarifies that he certainly does not and suggests that they lay back down, which they proceed to do. He reflects on what might have happened if there hadn't been a great disaster. He then asks the director and Kim Miso if he can enter now. The director requests that he return with them this time, emphasizing that it's the last dungeon. Dong-soo replies that if they are still alive and proceeds to enter the portal. The news broadcasts announce that patron St. Park Soo-ho is finally entering the long-awaited last dungeon, commencing the rescue mission and pondering the fate of the 77th Combined Unit on the other side. Hong says he engages the Banshee in combat, and goblins begin to attack the soldiers. Their stamina decreases, making it impossible for them to continue fighting. They express concern that if this situation continues, they will face annihilation. Sanino spots a building and identifies it as the boss room, which they find sooner than expected. He suggests instructing the entire unit to gather there and deploying the Iron Curtain to separate the boss room from the outside. This would enable them to eliminate the isolated boss. He notes that it appears the base has been under attack and the main squad is currently in the midst of battle. However, the situation doesn't look favorable and their location is 20 minutes away. He insists they must go to their rescue. Upon their arrival, they find themselves trapped and declare that they are completely cut off. They notice the Dead Knight approaching to attack them, recognizing it as a level 6 dungeon S-rank boss. They are alarmed because there are 12 of them attacking at once. Choi Soo-young fell, and as she looked at her status screen, she noticed that her energy was very low. She found herself unable to get up. He wondered why she was thinking about Park Soo-ho at this time. Suddenly, fairies appeared before her, and the soldiers also noticed them. They wondered if they had all gone to heaven. Hong say he also fell and saw the fairies. She pondered what this was and why the gauge was going up. She questioned the sudden appearance of these blue insects, but her confusion was interrupted when Park Soo-ho appeared. Instantly, all her stats surged to full capacity. A nearby soldier marveled at his overwhelming power, and Hong confirmed that he had fully recovered as well, quickly readied themselves to resume their assault on the goblins. Park Soo-ho deployed his fire fairies, swiftly dispatching the remaining goblins. Checking if the area was secure, he was approached by Choi Soo-young, who hugged him in surprise, questioning his unexpected presence. Soldiers nearby wondered if Park Soo-ho was their savior. Moments later, Hong Se arrived, finding the goblins obliterated. She searched and found her team not far away, where soldiers discussed Park Soo-ho's heroic actions and his rumored romantic involvement with Choi Soo-young. Hong Se expressed disbelief at Park Soo-ho's appearance, speculating it marked the final dungeon. He questioned if he had single-handedly cleared everything. He brushed her off, insisting she was too weak to be his partner, and suggested they hold their position longer. Hong Se insisted on staying close, concerned for her safety. Park Soo-ho rushed ahead, leaving her behind once more. Meanwhile, soldiers regrouped, discussing their dwindling numbers. Originally 21 strong, 6 fighters had fallen, leaving 15 survivors. Contact with base camp and the scouting party was lost. They observed the goblins resurrecting and debated their strategy. One soldier proposed regrouping with base camp first, but another warned that heading there now would be futile, as there was nothing left to find. He reveals that there are 5 more people alive in the boss room. The situation is dire. The soldier suggests they follow him without delay, emphasizing that time is of the essence. If they delay, everyone will die. He swiftly departs, leaving the soldiers wondering how they're supposed to keep up with him. Hong-se advises them that if they don't want to be left behind, they should run quickly, even though the path is infested with ghouls. She orders them to prepare for battle. One soldier summons his beast. His bear and wolves join him as they launch an attack on the ghouls. However, some soldiers express doubt about the need to fight as they debate. Choi Soo-young alerts them that it's 11 o'clock. A flying entity is approaching. Park Soo-ho gazes at her and contemplates the fact that she is the strongest king of the undead, a lich. A wave of undead is swarming in their direction. They wonder how they're going to deal with all of them. Prepare to launch an attack on the other side. Sun Jinwoo observes a castle and contemplates the presence of a black mist, a shroud of darkness, the magic capable of reanimating a corpse, and the ability to summon death knights. He deduces that it must be a lich, and the one inside is the lich's life vessel. He explains that if they destroy the vessel, the lich will perish along with everything reanimated by it. He proceeds to enter the castle, affirming that he can handle it on his own, and expressing the hope that they all survive until he destroys the lich's heart. One of his team members remarks that even if it's a lich, it won't be able to penetrate Sun Jinwoo's impenetrable black armor. On the other side, Park Soo-ho transforms into a golden eagle and takes flight to launch an attack on the lich. He states his intention to put an end to their game, mentioning that he no longer has the time to keep playing with her, and advises her to return home. Portals open on her side, and he summons wyverns through them. They unleash a fiery assault from all sides, causing the lich to vanish without a trace. Choi Soo-young remarks that it's not over yet, and emphasizes that a lich does not meet its demise so easily. The scene shifts as Sun Jinwoo enters the castle, where he encounters numerous vessel monsters. Reflecting that he preferred handling things alone, Park Soo-ho advanced and engaged the monsters in a fierce combat, unleashing a killing spree. Despite his skill, he soon found himself ensnared by the creatures, struggling to break free from their grip. Meanwhile, outside the castle walls, his team members fought desperately against the undead orcs, but were overwhelmed and immobilized. In that critical moment, Park Soo-ho's fire fairies arrived, accompanied by a wild boar and a bear, launching a sudden assault on the undead. The team members were astonished to see Park Soo-ho in action again. Utilizing his fire fairies, he incinerated the undead orcs, while a member of the SF unit noted that their strength was returning, and the flames were consuming all undead outside the barrier. After some time, Park Soo-ho realized that a team member was missing. Upon learning that the captain had ventured inside the castle, he decided to take action. Declaring his intent to retrieve the missing member, he instructed the others to hold their positions and avoid further risk. Before we continue, let's take a moment to shout out at Heavenstouch 117, who commented, "Always clicking on YouTube at the right time on our Questism video. Thanks for commenting." Transforming into a golden eagle, Park Soo-ho continued his assault, using his fire fairies to eliminate ghouls effectively. He then transformed into a powerful beast, relentlessly attacking until he reached the boss's room. There, he discovered Sun Jinwoo suspended in vessels, his life force draining into them. Observing Sun Jinwoo's condition, Park Soo-ho pondered the possibility that Sun Jinwoo was being kept alive intentionally, serving as a vessel for the lich's life energy. He lamented that given more time, the lich could have fully resurrected. Determined to free Sun Jinwoo, Park Soo-ho used his fire fairies to break the containment nets. Meanwhile, soldiers reported that the castle was exploding, causing the undead to disintegrate into dust and vanish. Simultaneously, outside the castle, an eruption signaled the start of a countdown. The soldiers announced Park Soo-ho's return just as he emerged from the castle, carrying the unconscious Sun Jinwoo in his arms. Concerned team members inquired about Sun Jinwoo's condition, to which Park Soo-ho reassured them that he was still alive and suggested they evacuate immediately. They expressed their confidence that the Man of Iron would not simply perish after a while. News broadcasts report that Park Soo-ho is in the midst of a mission to rescue a dungeon raid unit, marking an unprecedented milestone in human history. This rescue operation takes place merely an hour and 40 minutes after he commenced entering the dungeon to rescue the Special Forces unit. The door burst countdown has finally initiated, and the entire world is silently watching and hoping for the safe recovery of the brave combat team that ventured into the Level 7 dungeon in their quest to save humanity. A few minutes later, they emerged from the dungeon. News broadcasts proudly announced that the combat team has successfully cleared the Level 7 dungeon, a place that had plunged the world into fear and confusion. Park Soo-ho and the SF Unit 77. The soldiers confidently exit, although it appears that some of them have sustained injuries. It remains unclear who these injured individuals are, as well as the whereabouts of the dungeon which has vanished. Reporters approach Park Soo-ho and inquire about how he is feeling at this moment and whether he intends to share his raid strategy. In response, he transforms into an eagle and takes flight, leaving the questions unanswered. Meanwhile, Hong-se reflects on the idea that she could encounter a guy like that in her life, considering its fate. She then questions her companion, inquiring whether she has any feelings for him. The companion responds by asking what she's talking about, explaining that she is simply happy to see him. Hong-se suggests that she should ask him out. Hiro watches the news reporting his successful dungeon clearance, ponders whether there are still skills of which he remains unaware. He wonders about the kind of skill he used to clear the dungeon in just 2 minutes. As his phone's recharge depletes, he contemplates the likelihood that all his Japanese bank accounts have been frozen. He realizes that if he sells the blood crystals in his inventory, he'll likely be discovered. He overhears people speaking ill of him and praising Park Suho. He decides that he should use these individuals as the first sacrifice for upgrading the regression stone. Sun Jinwoo recalls a childhood memory when he attempted to catch a football on the road and a truck was approaching him. In that dire moment, someone intervened and saved Sun Jinwoo, but at the cost of their own life. He regained consciousness in the hospital, where medical staff inquired about what had happened. They informed him that Park Suho had rescued him and the other soldiers. On the other side of the story, Hong Se-hee and Park Junho entered the room. Hong asked if Park Suho had awoken yet, mentioning their planned meeting for today. Park Junho informed her that Park Suho was still asleep. She handed them kimbap soaked in raspberry wine and asked them to give it to him, requesting a call when he woke up. After she left, Park Junho remarked that he had never realized Park Suho was so popular with women. They then checked on Park Suho, who was sleeping in his wild boar transformation. Park Junho suggested trying to wake him, but Hong cautioned against it, recounting a previous experience when he tried to wake Park Suho in his wolf form and almost got bitten to death. Just then, Hong-hee burst into the room with a scream, asking if Park Suho was awake. She transformed into a cat and hugged him, explaining that after the SF unit's dispatch ends tomorrow, would have to return to the guild and wouldn't see him for a while, wanting to spend time with him now. Hong-se noted that the transformation would end soon. Shortly afterward, Choi Soo-young and Sun Jinwoo arrived to meet Park Suho. He transformed back into a human, but in the process found himself in a very compromising state with Hong-hae. Choi Soo-young, seeing them, became angry, threw a box at his head and stormed out. Sun Jinwoo expressed his gratitude, mentioning that he wanted to thank Park Suho and had learned that receiving help didn't just burden others, it also allowed one to save more lives in return. Meanwhile, a member of Korea's Awakened Bureau's criminal task force was tailing Lee Sun. She questioned him about his identity, to which he introduced himself. She asked why a woman who had been found dead from a gunshot wound to the head at a murder scene in Sim-dong was now alive and present. Angered, she transformed into a lizard and swiftly killed him. Meanwhile, the director is engaged in a phone conversation. After he finishes the call, Kim Miso approaches and informs him that an order has been received from the Army's Special Warfare Command. The order entails disbanding the coalition and dispatching SF Unit 77A to the Level 6 dungeon in Seoul's Area 5. He acknowledges the urgency of the situation in Seoul. She adds that it's not just Seoul. The entire world is in turmoil. He expresses his weariness and mentions that saving the country is only enjoyable the first few times. She informs him that the executives are waiting in the conference room at the bureau and offers to connect via video. General Manager Kim is on the call and appears to be very distressed. He questions why he looks that way and if they all attended some boot camp. General Manager Kim responds by stating that there is a highly serious situation and insists that he must quickly come to the bureau. He states that trouble appears to be brewing in Russia. The director inquires if the Russian army possesses a stock of conventional weapons. If so, why are they doing this? He explains that the current scale of the monster wave, which originated in Harbin, has been assessed to exceed the capacity of conventional weapons. However, the problem lies in the fact that if the monster's northbound route is altered due to nuclear weapons, the monsters destined for Russia will instead head towards North Korea. He mentions that the army is preparing for this possibility by dispatching and stationing the 1st and 3rd Corps along the Mijin River. However, he expresses concern that if the wave combines with the monsters in North Korea and heads south, they believe it would be challenging to contain them with their military's firepower alone. He concludes, surely they won't head in that direction. The director inquires about the situation concerning their country's dungeons. He is informed that 14 dungeons have emerged in Seoul today, including 6 level 6 dungeons. He says the requests for combat teams to be dispatched have been pouring in, but other guilds are also facing a shortage of combat teams, leaving no solution in sight. The director remarks, "They're telling me there are 6 level 6 dungeons. It's a total disaster." He reveals that 2 special task force members who were investigating a suspect have been murdered, and the suspect managed to escape. The director of the Awakened Bureau asked who the killer was, questioning if they were an awakener. In response, he explained that they believed the culprit to be a vampire who had died and been resurrected 3 times. The next morning, the SF unit prepared to depart and bid farewell to each other. Kim Bop suggested to Choi Soo-young that she should return to the detection team. She was advised to go to the most critical area, expressing her determination to become stronger. Meanwhile, news broke that Russia had dropped a nuclear missile. The situation was described cautiously, acknowledging the sensitivity of such actions on their own land. Despite initial reservations, it was executed. Concerned, the director emphasized the need to strengthen the defense wall around Seoul, which belonged to the territory of the two guilds. Cooperation requests had been received from both guilds, with little time for a break and a shortage of combat teams. Park Soo-ho was identified as the key figure who could resolve the crisis, noting claims that he could handle all of Seoul's dungeons if he chose to. However, he had not taken action, raising concerns. Reports from the guild association suggested the Suho Guild was not contributing adequately, despite receiving benefits. Later, Park Soo-ho and Dong-soo conversed on a mountain. Dong-soo remarked on the news coverage of people holding candlelight rallies due to Park Soo-ho's inaction amidst Seoul's dungeon crisis. Currently, there were 2 level 6 dungeons in Area 2, and the available time for intervention was a mere 27 days. Park Soo-ho questioned the necessity of venturing into hunting grounds within others' territories. Their discussion was interrupted by Kim Miso's arrival. She informed them of a cooperation request from the Awakened Bureau, stressing the urgency as there were several dungeons they couldn't contain without Park Soo-ho's assistance. Meanwhile, they witnessed an explosion in Suho land, speculating if it was related to the Blood Crystal power plant. Dong-soo suggested it might involve Lee Sung-woo. Reports indicated efforts to evacuate the injured and rescue those trapped within. Park Jun-ho states that they cannot enter due to the fire. Jung Jae-shik arrives and inquires about the situation. Dong-soo responds, suggesting that a blood crystal generator may have exploded. He suggests that they should prioritize extinguishing the fire. Then, Park Soo-ho arrives and employs a water vortex, causing a whirlpool of water to appear in the sky. It will begin to fall from the building. What will happen next? Find out next time by staying tuned for our future recaps. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more great recaps.